let us all do we can to build a better future.
Also want to talk a little bit about what's going on with grocery inflation.
Wait, hold on. I heard that Biden said inflation hasn't risen at all. Yesterday, he was saying it was today. Yes, yesterday there was zero inflation happened. Everything was fine. The government's saying everything's okay. Are you telling me that everything is not okay, Lainey?
This is from Chain Store Age. According to Numerator's Inflation Insights and Shopping Behavior Index, after leveling off in early July, grocery prices began to climb again at the end of the month, up 15.4% for the 4-week period ending on July 31st. And here's the deal. And this is important to understand. The most affected grocery channels, were online and dollar stores.
Okay, and this is something that you've alluded before, was the collapse of the online advertising.
The online stores that that people will rely on, people who are elderly, who maybe rely on the online grocery. It's for them. Also, the dollar stores that we're talking, Dollar General, Family Dollar. Dollar Tree is no longer $1; it's $1.25 now.
$1.25?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness!
And the dollar, you haven't been to Dollar Tree in a while?
No, I haven't. I thought dollar. I assumed that dollar store stood for integrity. $1.
$1.25 now. But oftentimes it is the Dollar General, the Family Dollar, these hard discounters that people rely on in a lot of communities where there are technically food deserts. The dollar store grocery prices are up 22.4%.
22.4%. And also, don't forget, gas is still expensive. Milk is still expensive. Everything else is rising up. So when you hear Biden or the Democrats or anyone who's a coveted vote blue no matter who with the blue check mark saying, trust in the Democratic Party, we're going to get us out of this recession and make sure this inflation goes away. No, don't believe them. Well, it's going to get worse.
The other thing I would note is health and beauty inflation rates have doubled in 4 months. So in April, health and beauty prices were up 9%, and then in July they were up to 18.5%. And the thing I want to point out is health and beauty, that is personal care products, which are really not optional. And the health products, things like over-the-counter medications, which are not covered by food stamps. Mm-hmm. So these are also items that people need for everyday living, and they can't even, people with very low incomes, they can't even get food stamps to cover that. Wow. So, people who are trying to buy aspirin or cough medicine or allergy meds, or the shampoo and deodorant and things like that, that sort of thing is also going up right now. The other thing I want to point out is that consumers are cutting back on dining out. So not only are restaurant owners having to deal with inflation for their own costs, but people aren't going to restaurants as much. And of course, that's going to have an impact because if the restaurants aren't getting business, they close down and their employees don't get paid.
Mm-hmm. Not good.
Not good. Not good at all. And the other thing that's been happening, this is actually kind of wild. There's been a huge bump in the use of an interesting little app, and it's called Too Good to Go. So what this is, it's an anti-food waste app where restaurants sign up and they match you. The app matches consumers with restaurants, and the restaurants put in the day's unused food into goodie bags. I mean, it's all wrapped up and everything, into goodie bags, and people pay like a flat rate, like $5. And they go in, they pick up a bag. It's whatever you get in the bag, but it's food it's good food, and it prevents food waste, and people get a super discount on restaurant food. Well, apparently they're seeing this massive bump and increase because people are using this as a way to save food, to save money. That inflation has gotten to the point where people are moving to these apps, these anti-food waste apps. And I think, while I think that's positive for the restaurants in many ways and for the app, the app company, but it does show that people are willing to go through a rather inconvenient process to get food that they don't even know what's in the bag, because they are probably trying to save money that much.
Oh, no.
As I said, I mean, I'm happy for, those who benefit from the program, but darn it.
Well, there's one other thing here I want to at least share with our viewing audience. We're hearing stories on how there are so many families struggling with food security, and how in the richest country in the world, we have children starving.
Mm-hmm.
And yet for years, I remember as a kid, through the advertisements online or on radio or on television, all these, organizations saying we need to go overseas to help out starving families there. We have it right here in our own backyard. And our government effectively has abandoned us. By abandoning us, they're okay with our people starving. American citizens starving. They're okay with this. Mm-hmm. And they're not going to do anything to fight the inflation. But yet we have people like Sinema, who's more than happy to do defense for a tax loophole to protect private equity firms and hedge fund managers. We have people in the GOP who are more than happy to have the price of prescription drug prices, still continue to rise up and up and up. And then you have Democratic lawmakers such as AOC or Bernie Sanders praising the Biden-Harris administration because what? They're not Trump? Inflation's still rising up. It is. And
what's really bothering me is when you see people. There was some kind of an exchange recently where somebody was saying, if you're concerned about inflation, it's because you have unexamined privilege.
No, I'm concerned about inflation because the thing is, when you make people desperate, they are going to react in an irrational environment. And the only way to react in an irrational environment is to make sure that you and whoever you're taking care of is provided for. And while actions might seem irrational, such as maybe stealing or crime or anything of that nature, it is an appropriate response, unfortunately, how devastating it is, due to the fact that we have politicians at the state and federal level that aren't implementing immediate resources to working class families. The American people need a bailout. And this story that you're talking about in regards towards inflation still rising up is a concern. And yes, I'm seeing a live stream chat where Danny says, "Don't worry, Nancy feeds us." It is funny because Nancy Pelosi had the audacity to say we feed people. No, we didn't get continuous stimulus checks. We didn't get a debt jubilee. We didn't get any kind of debt forgiveness during the COVID-19 lockdown. They're okay with us struggling, dying, and starving in the streets. And when I mean they, I'm talking about the politicians. And of course, corporate media is not going to talk about this. They're not going to talk about the rising of the rising scene of homelessness happening in America. They're not going to talk about children starving in America. But this is a real reality. And this is how you get people causing incidents. This is how you get violence in the streets. This is how you get people reacting in violent situations because they're stressed out, they're afraid, they're abandoned by our government, and there's a lack of trust in our institutions. So this rise of inflation is only going to make problems worse. But see, the thing is, it can be stopped because our politicians do have the power technically to do the right thing, but they're not going to do it, and they're not going to do it for you. And if you're a diehard Democratic voter or a diehard Republican voter, here's the real truth. You're not their number one constituent. It's the banks, it's the hedge funds, it's Wall Street, it's the corporations. You, the average voter, are of no concern to your Democratic and Republican lawmakers.
This is also the kind of thing, it doesn't even push people, it can push people to irrational behavior, but it also pushes people into financial peril. In many households, okay, you can absorb some inflation. You can absorb the inflation. You can cut, then you start cutting back. Then you start cutting back. But there's a point where there's nothing left to cut. And then it becomes, okay, do we have a meal? Do we have a second or third meal today? Or do we pay the light bill? Do we pay the rent? And then it comes in, okay, do the parents stop eating? What about, do we have to give away our dog? It's that kind of thing. At some point, the inflation is going to get to the point, it's going to be there. It's going to be where it's just household budgets cannot take any more strain.